God makes a real clear connection point as he's speaking between you're no longer slaves, you're my children. And Sabbath rest is a part of stepping into that identity.
Hi, welcome back to another week of Behind and Beyond. I'm Allison, and this week I get to sit down with Pastor Dave as we discuss this past week's sermon. Dave, welcome.
Yeah, good to be here.
You know this by now, I think, pretty well.
I do. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, you've got this down.
I'm a little tired right now. Just kind of like a long weekend stuff. But this is one of my favorite moments of the week. No joke. I do love doing this. I love these conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you love it because I've got a bone to pick with you a little bit. So.
I love these because I laugh. I laugh a lot in this space. So what did I do now? What did I say now? That's typically.
Yeah. Well, first of all, sports, but we won't talk about that. We have had plenty to say about sports. Our teams have been against each other.
And who has seemed to win these contests?
I'll say our basketball teams won the same amount of games in the tournament. So there you go.
But one team got into the full tournament and one team did not. And then one girls team beat the other women's team. So sorry, not a lot of country roads being played.
No, it's been a rough time. To be a Mountaineer fan. I told you already, but I was like I had my whole sweatshirt outfit ready if the women beat UNC last night.
They did not. It was a home game for UNC. So to be fair, that's a tough environment. They did well.
I
do like the women's tournament, how they do get some home games. I think that's kind of cool. Like for college students to have access to cheer on their teams versus, and I think the players, here we go, sports.
Yeah, I know, here we go. I was trying to say not sports. That's not my bone. I've got another bone.
I think the players shoot better, my own personal theory. I think they shoot better in sort of regular arenas versus the Superdome or the PPG arena because like spatially, it's just weird. It takes usually the first 4 minutes of those games, it takes a minute for them to adjust. Yeah. But anyways, so sorry for the Mountaineers. I cheer for the Mountaineers. You know that. But just not over the Tar Heels.
Yes.
So
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. No, the other thing is that so as a family, we're talking about fasting, coming out of your fasting sermon around the table, going into Lent. And my 10-year-old decided he was going to fast from TV. And so which I think.
That's a challenge.
For me, it is.
Sure.
So that's what I was kind of going to tease you about. So he's fasting TV, but it is me also fasting.
That means you have to.
Yes, my own quiet time as well. So he's doing great.
Is he sticking to it?
Yeah,
like
he is.
The whole 40 days? Or is it like set days of fasting TV?
He's fasting, and I will say he got very particular, more like shows, like none of his Star Wars cartoons, but he watched like the basketball game last night with us as a family, but none of his like normal
the
things.
Clone Wars.
So.
Does he
the
watch
Clone
those?
Wars? Yeah,
great stuff.
Yeah.
I was a big Star Wars fan. I can't say big because I have met folks who are big Star Wars fans. But I was a Star Wars fan, and my boys loved the Clone Wars. I thought that they were great. Yeah. Great shows.
There's a new one, and I can't even remember what it's called. There was a new one that was out. There's so many Star
Andor.
Wars.
I feel like I saw an ad for that.
It was like a cartoon.
Oh,
but,
cartoon.
Yeah. We watched the whole thing. I just can't remember the name.
People talk about Bluey. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I've never seen
Yeah.
Bluey.
We're kind of past Bluey, but we're into and I didn't know much about Star Wars before, but I am
You're in it.
Fully in it
now.
Man. Yeah. Well, not fully because I can't even remember the name of the show, but I'm trying.
May the 4th going to be a big day for you guys?
Maybe. Maybe we should. We missed Mario Day, which I'd realize. Did you know there's Mario Day?
No.
It's March 10th, so Mario.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I know. Isn't that fun? Oh. Yeah. I think Mario, like Nintendo does like extra
I can get behind that.
Yeah, it's kind of cute.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
You got to talk to Travis. Travis is a big Star Wars guy, and I bet May the 4th, Travis is on our staff. Big Star Wars guy. So, anyways.
Yeah, maybe we'll have a little party for him. But speaking of media, what I am curious, are there like shows or podcasts or books what type of media are you consuming right now that's bringing you joy? What's something bringing you joy?
So I watch some YouTube stuff on golf, and I do. I'm trying to get better.
Where this was going.
So I'm actually trying to get better at my short game. And everyone says that's where you learn to score. And my last round out, last Friday was just there were parts of it that were okay, and I'm still new. I'm less than a year into this, but my short game was atrocious. I mean, like I didn't know what I was doing and learning. So I've been watching. There's a couple of people I follow online with chipping and putting techniques, and so no joke. I will. We have a sunroom. It was a deck. They built previous people built it's a 4-season room, so it's heated and everything. I at night I chip into a net. I've been practicing.
I can tell this is really seeping into all parts of I feel like golf comes up in many conversations lately.
It really is. I feel like I'm being that guy, and I don't like being that guy for anything. But it's been a beautiful like distraction. So I watch that, and then maybe I won't say that one. I watch a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not going to say. I know somebody who has done some stand-up stuff, and so I was just recently. I was watching his stand-up work, and I don't know if he would want me promoting that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I really appreciate about anyone who gets a hobby and like gets into it. I find that I love that about people.
Yeah,
I think it's really fun when people are passionate about something or excited about something.
I think we need that kind of stuff in life. I think maybe for a long time in my life, and this connects to Sabbath.
Yeah.
I went without really even, when people would say like, so what do you do outside of church? And I was like, I hang out with my family.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing, but I didn't really have like a personal passion or like a hobby, and hobbies can be overwhelming and be an idol at the same time. But no, I have found too, like in terms of media, that's a much purer thing for me to like focus my attention on at the end of the night is my golf game, my emerging golf game. But I would say outside of that, basketball. And then like when we just want to laugh, we put The Office on. Like it's like our go-to. Yeah.
Well, that's a good transition because I do think the conversation about Sabbath, especially maybe for people in those years with little toddlers and kids, it's like kind of hard to figure out. So actually we have a listener question. So I'm just going to start with that.
Let's go.
So she writes in, great sermon. I agree with the practice of Sabbath.
Let's just pause right there.
Oh, yeah.
She said great sermon. That's all.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's just end. Great.
With an
Thank you for the
exclamation mark. With an exclamation mark. So there you go.
Great.
Not even a period. I agree with the practice of Sabbath and would love to have a whole day to worship God, rest, do something fun. I'd be interested to hear how Dave would envision or recommends practicing Sabbath while meeting the needs of multiple small children. Should I have a mindset shift about Sabbath expectations? Am I just in a stage of life where Sabbath is more here or there? Appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I would lean on I would come at this from the freedom side of it, not the legalistic side. But I would also say rhythm with Sabbath is important. So if you can start with, I get it, the season of life, stage of life, little kids, they're demanding, they're consuming. So you more have windows of time versus full days of time. But I think you can build in a discipline of what's a window of time consistently that we're going to commit to Sabbathing as a family. And so maybe it's Sunday at church and then 3 hours that follow it. And then it grows as your kids grow. But the fact if it's inconsistent, it's easier to skip. When it is consistent and rhythmic, your kids get to step into the practice as well. They can go and do something while you're taking time because you're also training them on what Sabbathing looks like. So I understand, I tried to present Old Testament, Intertestament, and then New Testament Jesus. And so is a day the biblical standard? Yes. Is there freedom? I feel like I break mine up. Sometimes it's mostly Friday, but the bulk of my worship is also on Sunday with the church family. So I would say be intentional, be consistent, choose a window of time that you can practice it and try to incorporate those 4 practices that I've talked about, or maybe rotate them in and out, almost like, you have art for one semester, you have music for one semester. Sometimes you can be seasonal about those things too.
Yeah. And I think that brought up another question. Her question kind of made me think of another question.
That was a great question.
It was a great question.
It's an honest, real thing. And I think we're supposed to be honest and real about this so that we don't lose the pursuit of who it's aimed for.
Yeah.
So even disciplining our kids to say, hey, these next 6 hours, this is our Sabbath. Why? Because Jesus tells us to.
Yeah.
because he's our Lord. And we're going to stop doing this stuff for this period of time. It's a discipling thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes I have historically thought about Sabbath as a very individualistic experience. I am Sabbathing.
Yeah.
And I'm having kind of quiet, alone time. But so that's my question for you. Mm-hmm. Can you Sabbath as a family, which you kind of just said yes to? And so what might that look like? Like, can we get some practical things of what you might do with kids, or how a family can practice Sabbath together? Or also, let's say you're single or just don't have kids. Can you Sabbath in community? What does that look like?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think so that you can. I think there takes some preparation in leading up to it, so that because sometimes when community gets involved, hospitality rises to the surface, and then it becomes like, I got to put out a spread for everybody, and I got to make sure the home is perfect. And so I'm going to cross promote right now. If you tune into the 167 podcast later on this week, my guest, Julian, has a beautiful family practice that we're going to talk about when it comes to Sabbathing. So I don't want to give away everything that he talks about. But yes, I do think there's a communal practice to this with intentionality. And I think one of the best steps that can lead to that is stepping away from screens. Mm-hmm. Because that's often what separates the family. Everyone you can be in the same room, but I noticed one night recently, I looked around our living room. Brooke, myself, my daughter, my son Gino was at the gym. We were all on a screen. We were together, but we were apart. Mm-hmm. And I think when you put the screens down for a period of time, you can't help but lift your eyes and look around and say, so what do we do now? Mm-hmm. Figure it out. Mm-hmm. Go for a walk. Go play a game, cook a meal together. Someone asked me, is cooking work? I'm like, well, it depends on how you cook and what the goal of cooking is. I said, if it's like a beautiful passion point and like this thing you love to do and you get joy out of that, that's a restful passion, playful thing. So I think Sabbathing, the connection point is, and I'll come back to something else here, communal Sabbathing, especially within the family, it requires stepping away from screens. And I mean, like, not let's all be on the same screen together. I think it means putting them down and figuring out together, so what are we going to do right now? Or let's all just take a break and take a rest, take a nap. Mm-hmm. So that happened Sunday at our house in the afternoon. Nico was home. We were all three taking a nap at the same time, and it was like, it was pretty wonderful. Mm-hmm. So my older practice, so my daughter does school right now at home. Mm-hmm. And so this has sort of interrupted this for 2 years with good reason. But part of my older practice was Brooke and I had a standing lunch date to be together on Fridays because kids are very consuming.
Sure.
So Friday is my off day. We made that our day when we could be together. So she Sabbathed as well in that moment, stepping away from work at home and just being together. So, yeah.
I'm recognizing, I kind of just dove right in because I wanted to get right to that listener question, but I didn't really, let me pull back a second and say, was there anything from the sermon that you wish you could have talked more about that you didn't get into the sermon?
So I was all over the place this weekend with my notes. I texted, so I did the Saturday night one, and then Sunday morning I came into my office and I was like, I didn't feel like it flowed well. And so I chose to share my personal experience, the conviction that I hadn't been Sabbathing well.
Yeah.
Or I hadn't been Sabbathing. And so I just texted Jonathan, our lead production guy in Wexford. I was like, hey, if you can't follow me with the screens, it's not you, it's me. Yeah. I am going to be all over the place. And so I really just tried to I had filled up, and this is a passion point of mine. And I would say, in addition to generosity, this has been a sustainer in my life, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally. And so I sort of preached from the heart with what I had stored up. So I think I was very different sermon to sermon to sermon.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so I thought one of the beautiful pieces that I don't know if I had spent enough time on was that connection point of identity and God giving the law, the commandments, as a way for the Israelites to know what it looks like to be his people. How do we live counterculturally? How do we live differently? And putting work down is part of that.
Yeah.
And in Deuteronomy 5, I don't know if I mentioned it in all the sermons, God makes a real clear connection point as he's speaking between you're no longer slaves, you're my children. And Sabbath rest is a part of stepping into that identity.
Yeah.
And so the other piece for communal is like over time, when you put work down, it will be less difficult than the first 4 times you do it. And so everybody, sometimes it means doing your homework on a Saturday if Sunday's going to be your Sabbath day. And I was just talking to someone recently. They're like, so then if I choose Friday as I'm not going to work that day, I'm going to dedicate that day to the Lord and these things you talked about. Saturday morning, I was like, yeah, that's the beauty and freedom of it. So that was probably the piece, the slaves, God's children, the identity thing. And I probably wish I could have taken more time to talk about those ingredients. I'm a huge believer in communal, in-person, together church worship. And I'm not trying to shame folks because we still have an online platform. It's still important to have an opportunity to connect when you can't be there in person. But sometimes I think we choose convenience over really being God's people and really stepping into to taste the beauty of the church that we're supposed to taste every single week when we come together. So yeah those would be some points that I felt like, I would highlight those.
What do you think is the primary thing that the Lord is trying to develop within us, within Sabbath, excuse me?
Trust.
Yeah. Do you want to expand that?
I mean, like, I think there's always like this sort of a central question. I said that with drama. Trust. Because I was like chewing on it for a second.
Yeah.
I think in my last sort of 6 months, I was almost like, I don't know if God, maybe you don't do it explicitly, but you live in a way where I trust my timing. This is more urgent than maybe you realize. And so I need to work more.
Yeah.
I need to perform better. I need to be more prepared for a sermon. 2 weeks ago, I spoke I preached at Pastor Paul Hunter, artist formerly known as Dormont Campus Pastor. He's the lead pastor at Cornerstone Church. He asked me to come and preach a sermon. This is a story, right? A sermon that I had already preached at Northway. He wanted me to preach that at the new church. And so you would think, you already preached the sermon. You know the material. It went well, and you can listen to it. I was so nervous going into it. Why would I be nervous for a sermon I already, like I didn't rest. I didn't unplug. I didn't disconnect and just trust God. God, you're going to work. It's not about me doing my work. So I think the central piece of it is trusting in God's provision, trusting that he is the one that saves, trusting in the fact that he is the one who blesses and does the multiplication that we all long for in whatever area of life that we are, and living in a way that says, God, I'm going to demonstrate this trust by not making work my God. Because like in our culture, maybe more, I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but maybe even more so than like the Eastern culture that Jesus did ministry in, work is a god in America. Yeah. And COVID was an interrupter of that. I don't know that we're not like away from that interruption. I think we're sort of back to the grind.
Maybe even double. I feel like it just swung back harder.
Yeah, because now work from home can be just consuming.
Yeah.
Right. And we have these things. I sometimes despise this. It beeps at me. It buzzes. It always makes work available at my fingertips. And so therefore we are very impatient people. We expect a response immediately because did you get my email? Yeah. Sometimes when people say, did you get my email? I'm like, well, I think the server's working.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I didn't check my email. It's almost like a sin not to be tethered to your email.
Yeah.
And I think we have to find a healthy balance of that. So Sabbath is about trust.
Yeah.
Really that God is who he says he is and that he's going to do what he promises to do for us.
Yeah.
So
Thomas Aquinas kind of proposed this idea of his whole thinking was
a long time ago.
Long time ago. Yeah. So he was thinking about this, and that I guess the question is really about desire. Like, what does it take for a human to feel like all their desires are fulfilled? And his answer to that was really, well, it takes everything. It takes the whole world. It would have to be unlimited opportunities, unlimited money, unlimited experiences, unlimited relationships with people. And so kind of, I think the thinking then behind that is that sometimes we work to fulfill those desires without even realizing they're never going to be fulfilled. We will work and work and work and work, and not the end of desire will never come there. It will never
lie.
Be there. Yes.
It's digging in sand.
And so something else has to give us contentment. And so the idea of Sabbath is just this continual reminder that those desires will not be fulfilled except within God, and that the only way we're meant to live kind of in an eternity is with him, right? And so
the dwelling place of God is with man.
Yeah.
That's our chief aim.
Yeah.
That's contentment. That's satisfaction. That's fulfillment, right? And so I've been on this kick with the word telos, right? All staff meeting, and I don't know if we think enough about the chief aim of our life and what we're working toward. And so sometimes we think work and achievement, well, if I can just achieve or accomplish or earn this figure or title, then I will be, and you're not. It never satisfies. It never fully satisfies. And so that's sometimes what Sabbath does as well in a beautiful way, is it reorients us back to, the only one who can fulfill us. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
It's fulfillment in him. And we're called to abide in him, but a lot of times we abide in achievement. We abide in our work. We abide in our image because we think that will satisfy. I love the Aquinas stuff. I think that's pretty brilliant. So I think we're going to hear the word telos a lot at Northway. God's doing something with me. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times anxieties, like fears and uneasiness, can be traced back to, so what are you aiming for? I
agree.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I'll give an example of my daughter. She does a local theater group, and she was one of the wicked stepsisters in Cinderella. She crushed it Sunday. Amazing, like sassy stepsister attitude the whole time. She even, like, when the scene was over here, and the lead character who played Cinderella goes Northway as well. She did amazing as well, right? Mila's friend. But I loved about Mila, when she was over here, the scene was over here, the spotlight was over here, Mila was still in character, because it's your kid, right? You're watching your kid the whole time.
Sure, of course, yes.
And I was like, you did such an amazing, she acted the whole time. But so Saturday night she had a great show, right? I couldn't go because we had church. And then Sunday I was going for our 4:00 show, right? And she did great Saturday. And so she's so much like me. Mm-hmm. All the nerves, all the feelings. She had to go take a walk because she had nervous energy. I do that. I have to exercise on Saturday because waiting until Saturday night church is like long and like taxing. Anyways, she was like, well, I just want it to be as good as last night.
Yeah.
And I said, so what's your goal? She's like, I want it to be really, really good. I was like, but what if your goal was just to do your best? Can you be anxious? If your goal is to do your best, you actually are in charge of that. Effort. Try your hardest. That's not an okay goal in our culture.
Yeah.
We don't celebrate best. We celebrate A+. And if not, you fell short. Mm-hmm. And so I was just talking with her, and sometimes the root of our anxiety is in the aim of our life. And probably the root of that, why do you need to do just perfect and as good as last night? Well, because that will get people to like me, and I will be seen as... So I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to our telos and our chief aim. So,
yeah. And do you think I believe in my own life that the rest kind of recenters me and brings me back 100%. To what is meant to bring contentment in my life.
Yes.
But it's so easy to get caught up in this kind of hamster wheel of work. And so it's almost like this forced spot of no.
Yeah.
It's almost when you take a break, it's like, oh yeah, this is not
as important as I made it out to be.
Yeah.
It wasn't as urgent. Mm-hmm. I think we live with false sense of urgency around a lot of stuff. We delayed our taxes during COVID, national delay, put them back. It'll be okay. If you could delay taxes, whoa, that's a really, really big deal. But I wish I could have even dreamt a little bit in the sermon. I think a lot of us get to our vacation, the finish line of the year, and we're exhausted. Yeah. We're out of gas. And you got 7 days. Maybe you got 4 days, right? And the first 3 days, you're just wiped. And there's no play. There's no joy. There's sleep. Mm-hmm. And a lot of just exhaustion. And just at the time when you feel like, oh, okay. I remember after finals week in college, the first 3 days, I was a zombie. Because I spent so much time and energy. And that's sometimes what our vacations look like. And I don't think it has to be that way. If we have a rhythm of resting and unplugging and not working, I believe, and I have done it, you can get into vacation energized with like a new vigor, not with just I need a nap.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think God designs it to be that way. The question is are we willing to step into that? So I guess I would just say, like, picture heading into that off season or that break or that vacation with energy, not on fumes. That's what Sabbath does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do think our temptation, I mean, even when you ask people, how are you doing? And I'm super guilty of this too. How's it going? Oh, very busy. And I think our temptation is so much to kind of get to like 10% left in the tank. We're not like, if zero is like dead, we're getting like really in a like exhausted place.
Like 20 miles left on the fuel gauge.
Yes. Yeah. And then we kind of refill up to maybe 50% and then we keep going. And it's hard to get us to the back to, if 100 is like content and abundant joy and a sense of rest in the Lord. And, you know, obviously that's like a idealized version. But if 100% is like meant to shape us and to be disciples of Christ, we're having a hard time getting there, I think.
I think what I hear you saying is we've probably lost sight of what 100% looks and feels like. Mm-hmm. When Sabbath is a distinct, intentional part of my life, when people say, Dave, how are you doing? I can say good, even if everything isn't good. Mm-hmm. There's something about living from the rest of God, not striving just for a rest from God. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and like finding out that 100% is who we're meant to be and where we're meant to live from. So I've made a declaration. I'm going to re-engage back into my Sabbath practice. You know, I don't know why for the last 6 months, but it had a degenerating effect on me and my soul.
Yeah.
But I feel like a different person today, even after last weekend, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, I think it's just an easy thing to
not slip.
Yeah, not realize you're even letting slip.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just get really practical as we're kind of wrapping
Let's
up.
do it. Yeah.
I think you kind of touched on this with the question about cooking that someone asked you, but I do think a practical question is like, what if work is restful for me? And what I mean by that is, so maybe I have my job that's work. Like, so for example, my job is more cerebral in a lot of ways. Like I'm thinking a lot or typing a lot or, and kind of not moving my body. I'm like with people,
like,
but
can I cut my grass? Someone asked me that.
Yeah. Or can I garden?
Yes.
Or what if I enjoy that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think I would put work as in, I wouldn't do your taxes on your Sabbath day. That's work. I mean,
someone might love that. What if they?
I think someone's lying. The tax code is so confusing. I think we probably need to reorient what's work and what's not work. And here's the starting point. I would say, step away from your day job.
Yes.
So Brooke's day job, she works at home. So that would mean, what does it look like for Brooke not to do her daily rhythms at home on a Sabbath day? That's challenging. I think that's more challenging, stepping away from your work when you live in your work. Yeah. So if you work from home, to me, it's like, close your office doors and don't go in that room that day. Can you garden? Yes. Can you cut the grass? Of course. Can you clean your house? If that brings you joy, yeah.
What does Brooke do to kind of separate herself from the house? Like, how does...
When we get out of the house and we go out about and shopping, she disconnects from the pressure and the rhythm and the schedule and the this needs to be done and this person needs that. So usually it involves us getting out of the house and away from the house. And sometimes it's a walk. She likes to nap.
Yeah.
If she's a professional sleeper, she can. we always joke.
Me too. I love a nap, but I always feel guilty about it.
You shouldn't.
I think that's a hard thing too. I always feel like, okay, like this is an embarrassing confession I'm just about to make here publicly. If I'm like one of those people who, if my husband and kids are out, maybe they're like at soccer practice or something, I'm like, I'm just gonna lay down and take a quick nap. I hear them coming in the door. I sit up as fast as I can. Like, just sat down for a moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I need to look like I've been working or producing somehow.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I don't think that's not a truth. That's a lie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I know.
You know
I know that. Yes. But I know that that's like in my like that's a lie I have to fight. I know that's kind of in my DNA, probably even just the way I was raised, that like work is a very high value and you shouldn't be seen as lazy.
Yeah. So I would look at the grid of like, just because you take a nap, does that mean you're lazy? Maybe you need a nap because you're not lazy. Brooke is the opposite of lazy. She's a very hard worker, and she goes 110 miles an hour. And if she walks by the couch and looks at it too long, she can take a nap.
Yeah.
Like, she can fall asleep with the best of them. And I admire that about her, because I'm not like, I need everything. The temperature needs to be right. The noise level needs to be right.
Oh, I could take a nap right here. I could probably fall asleep right now.
That is Brooke. Brooke is like, sometimes we say the word couch and she starts to nod off. But I would look at the lens of like, am I lazy? Do people see me as lazy? Am I acting lazy? And if the answers are no, because slothfulness is not biblical, it's not godly. Like, we're meant to produce. We are meant to be fruitful here on the earth, but we're also meant to rest. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if this is totally brand new to someone or to me, you've never practiced Sabbath, how would you suggest getting started? Where do I start? And you kind of said that with a family, maybe take it in smaller chunks. But what are some even markers that maybe help set in my mind Sabbath is now starting?
Don't touch work for 24 hours. Like, and you know where it is? It's email.
Yeah. That's
where it creeps in. And so one of my starting points for Sabbathing was taking off the notifications on my mail icon, MAIL. MALE icon sounded weird to me in my head. My mail app, whatever that is. So it doesn't tell me when new emails are there. This is not in charge of us.
Yeah.
We tell this who's boss, right? And so I don't allow it to push notifications to me, so that when I pick it up to check the time or the weather, I'm like, oh, I got an email. I wonder who it is. It takes you right back there. So really practical. Take the notifications off of it. You can go fetch email when you want to fetch your email. Those are both two options that you have. And I would literally say start with if you can, 24-hour period, and you can, away from your day job, your actual work, and then bring in some form of worshiping of God, like intentional time to glorify Him and let Him heal you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I know some families too who do some sort of like almost symbolic thing to kind of help represent. So light a candle, or
you're a big candle lighter, aren't you? Jesus is the light of the world.
Yes, always. Yeah. Light a candle or say a blessing or
that wasn't
prayer.
a bad thing.
Well, I was just thinking about that. Am I a big candle person? But yeah, I guess
like liturgy.
Yeah. Maybe a big liturgy. I think rhythms.
Yeah.
And so even just saying like a blessing over the start, or a way of like marking time.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful for me because
like a start and a stop.
Kind of. Yeah. To kind of otherwise I think I just kind of like slip into it, but then it's easy to just kind of slip out of it, you know? And so if I'm kind of like just taking a moment to acknowledge Sabbath is starting, it's helpful.
Can I like speak to parents in this moment right now too? I think in our effort to parent well, we sometimes over-program our kids. And so I think what our kids need, this is, I don't want this to sound arrogant or back in my day, but they need to learn how to be curious. And they need to learn how to be creative. And if we are always programming their time, they're never going to develop that muscle. And so part of me, if I was sitting with a parent and just saying like, hey, tell me about your life, tell me about your rhythm, what do you guys do? I was like, why don't you cut out a 3-hour window and say, go play outside. And don't go and play with them. Let them go figure it out. Let them go find a stick and make it a sword, or whatever a stick is going to be, I don't want to offend anybody.
Sure. Yes.
A stick was a rifle to me growing up. Like you played like in the army, or you were, whatever, or you swung it and hit things like a ball or your friends.
Yeah.
That was not always good. But you engage your mind, right? And you engage nature. And I think that builds some resiliency, and it builds some ability to be content in some quiet and not always have to be stimulated by screens.
Yeah, that's interesting. John just last week on Solitude was talking about how important it is, he thinks, for kids to be bored. So he was like, when my kids are bored, I'm just kind of like, okay, so, you know, and I feel like we often in our family we probably like over dramatize it, but our kids have learned to not say they're bored really, because we are like, that is so great. We're so happy for you that you're bored. Think of all the things you can imagine. So they just
I think we're uncomfortable with ourselves and our own thoughts. And that's where those get loud when we're a little bit bored. And I think we need to like allow more space for that as parents. And like I played in not everybody has woods around their house, but back in the yard or out on the stoop or on the street, or you also build relationships and communication skills with your friends in those moments.
Yeah. So. And I live in like the heart of the city, but there's a park blocks away. They can go. Yeah,
there's a sidewalk.
There's sidewalk. Yeah, my kids play on the sidewalk.
Chalk.
They do. Yes.
You can use a ball. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ride your bike.
Yeah.
Go explore. As far as you're allowed.
I know. I'm like the one block. They're trying to get further down. We're working on that. So down the block, like how much further they can go.
I had that too.
City. Yeah.
When I grew up, there was this there's not a major road, but like a pretty substantial road. People went 45, 50 miles an hour. It separated two neighborhoods, and I had to walk my bike across the street.
Big deal when you can get big enough to.
Well, all my friends were like, your parents aren't here. And I remember being like, I have to walk my bike.
Yeah. Oh, you did the right thing then. Did you do it? You did?
Most times.
Yeah.
Eventually, I started, riding the bike across. But that was like my boundary line. I remember that.
Yeah. Any last things you want to say about Sabbath?
Nope. Take one.
All
Try
right.
it.
That's great.
God will work. He will transform you through it. I'm certain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, Dave. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Allison.
Bye.